As an 80s kid, I enjoyed the best toys and TV shows, and I experienced the internet's arrival firsthand. In 1993, my mom purchased our first PC with its 14.4 modem and limited internet hours. Back then, America Online reigned supreme, and users averaged just 7 hours a month online.
You've got mail.
Now we're online 7 hours a day. We hoped the internet would revolutionize knowledge, but the reality became complicated and troubling. I didn't realize how much even until a middle school incident occurred nearby. The New York Times described this as the first mass social media attack by students against teachers. At Great Valley Middle School, students created fake TikTok accounts impersonating their teachers by misusing photos from other social media platforms. At first, student comments appeared typical of preteens venting about their teachers. Growing up, who didn't make fun of a teacher or 2 or 10? The dynamic isn't new, but in my generation, a funny note or drawing shared between 5 friends in homeroom would typically be forgotten about by lunch. This snowballed, and fake accounts soon were filled with innuendo, racist memes, homophobia, and fake hookups. The educators were unaware for weeks these derogatory public accounts existed. How did this get out of control?
I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. Social media isn't new, and we've had problems in the past when Facebook was first getting big.
Yeah. This is Nikki. She's an educator and teachers union president in Great Valley, where she's heard every detail.
I don't know that we can say that students that are in a middle school age or any age realizes what impact this makes on people. I think what happened, knowing kids, they're curious. They thought they were going to be funny. And then with social media, when you're impersonating a teacher and creating a page, it was beyond shocking. It's difficult to think that the kids that you love and teach would do something like this that would impact your family and your reputation.
With the devices that we're giving our kids today, do you think they're equipped to handle them properly?
Not fully. It's like when you're teaching your toddler how to eat, right? You're first teaching them to eat with their fingers, and then you might hand them a plastic fork. I'm not handing them a steak knife at 2 years old.
No, good idea.
We need ways to educate the kids on not only how to use these devices, how to stay safe with them. It's our social media platforms that have to be aware of this, that kids are getting through and using their platforms inappropriately. And it is our legislators.
I have to want to stop it, too.
Yes, it's our legislators, and it's every community member, because no one's immune from anything.
I'm not here to throw Great Valley schools nor its students under the bus. As a middle schooler desperate to obtain an ounce of popularity, I bet I would have viewed these fake accounts too. I think my mother raised me better not to add fuel to the fire, but I can't rule out my 12-year-old self being an absolute idiot. The desire to prank a teacher isn't new, but the tools at our kids' disposal today are more intense and sophisticated, and we've done a poor job setting acceptable standards. I felt overwhelmed as a parent trying to keep up, and if you think this is bad, artificial intelligence is making it easier to conjure deep fakes and altered imagery. The more I've researched media literacy, the more digital manipulation and influence has become my greatest parental concern. We need to be better, and I know we can get there. How do we teach this generation to navigate the flood of information bombarding their young brains and build a critical eye? Where does a healthy balance of privacy and safety meet? Because I don't want our kids becoming online trolls, adding fuel to the fire, and I don't think I'm alone. This is Grown Up Dad. Last year, court filings from a 2-year investigation by 14 attorneys general revealed documents accusing TikTok of deceptive practices designed to addict young users.
All it takes to hook an average user is viewing 260 videos as short as 8 seconds. Thus, in under 35 minutes, an average user is likely to become addicted to the platform.
Research confirms our kids receive a constant diet of targeted content through social media apps. For girls, algorithms often push beauty-focused videos and allow appearance-altering filters. TikTok's algorithm even prioritizes more physically attractive users, reducing the frequency of others. For boys, seemingly innocent sports or gaming videos frequently lead to troubling manosphere and misogynistic content. On TikTok, it took just 9 minutes to offer troubling content, including explicitly anti-feminist and anti-LGBTQ videos. Even more extreme messaging appeared within 23 minutes. And YouTube Shorts, similar to TikTok, recommended problematic videos after just 8 minutes. These online challenges have upped the parenting difficulty level for all of us. But social media isn't the only issue. As media becomes more polarized, teaching critical thinking is essential. I reached out to a friend, Patrick Murphy, a former congressman and undersecretary of the U.S. Army. He's a media professional who hosted his own show on MSNBC, is a frequent contributor on Fox News, and he co-hosts a wealth management show on Yahoo Finance. And I picked a hell of a day to interview him. Halfway through the interview, we paused. Fox News called to prepare him for a live spot in 20 minutes because Ukrainian President Zelensky and President Trump just finished a chaotic and antagonistic meeting in the White House. What was supposed to secure American aid in the fight against Russia for mineral rights devolved into a diplomatic failure.
But we got to remember, just a week ago, Martha, was the 3-year anniversary of Russia illegally invading Ukraine. There's 42 million people. There's a free country, and they invaded them. They've lost tens of thousands of their own people. You know, Martha, this isn't like about like a news clip or about like TV. This is life or death. This is David versus Goliath.
Where do you think our generation is still getting our news, and where do you think your kids are getting the news?
Well, our kids are just like most Americans. They're getting their news from their screen. Unfortunately, for far too many of them, they're getting it from TikTok.
How do I help my kid understand what's going to be presented to him?
Well, first off, we have to understand there's these outside influences in America. So China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and then extreme terrorists. They are spending tens of millions of dollars to divide America from within. So they're putting out there, especially on social media. And so for me, I understand my kids are going to see some of that stuff and not have the experience like I have, because I've deployed overseas and lived overseas, and they know that they can always come to me and talk to me about it. We have conversations. It is very much when we're having dinner at the table, when we're driving, no phones, we're talking, and that includes me too, for the record, right? We're all put on this earth to make this world a better place. And that means it starts our own community, our own family, and for our country and beyond.
What does truth mean to you today, and especially in this media landscape?
Well, some people out there think that their opinion is truth, and it might be truth to them, but it doesn't make it the truth, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not reading things and going to different news sites, if you're just getting one version of things, you're doing yourself a disservice. The whole point is about having the intellectual humility to learn from others.
How do you have a conversation so often with people who you fundamentally disagree with, and how do you know when to engage?
Yeah, well, first, I love my country. I love America, right? And so my job is to communicate to the American people the values that I hold dear, that we hold dear as Americans. I think people, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, get wrapped around a certain perspective and they got to argue and fight, and that's not my jam. My jam is, what am I going to do to let my kids know the values that America stands for? Why do we go on Fox News? Why don't I have the debates? Because I fundamentally disagree with some of the gusts that they have on, and I'm willing to go toe-to-toe with them. And I think my perspective needs to be heard, even if that audience might not agree with me.
That's really great. Do you think this is how people in the next generation are still going to be getting their news, and how do you help get the right facts to people 10 years from now?
I think we're seeing, diversification on that. We're also seeing a lot more folks that go to news sources that's going to complement what they already believe.
Right.
And I would say to my fellow Americans, read other things than beside what makes you feel good.
I like that. Patrick,
Thank you, brother.
Nice seeing you.
You too, man.
Thank you. Watching him respond reminded me of the courage needed to engage respectfully with opposing views, crucial in a healthy democracy. Facts and truth matter to understand our world. That's why it shocked me when Meta announced replacing its Facebook fact checkers with community notes, deepening my concern about misinformation. I struggle with balancing my son's privacy and safety. And seeking guidance, I met Hari, father of 4 and founder of Aura, the parental safety app which works to identify subtle behavioral changes in our kids. What do you think we should understand about misinformation, manipulation, and just the bombardment of messages that we all get today, both ourselves and our kids?
If you think about why somebody puts out misinformation, it's because there is some demand somewhere inside the ecosystem that somebody's going and asking a question online.
Yeah.
If you can capture that demand, you could potentially monetize it. Making sure that kids understand that not all information is created equal and not all information is truth, and being able to dissect between what's credible, what's trustworthy.
And what do you do, I think, with your own kids? And obviously different ages, you're going to tell them different things. How do you help them navigate this world with, in a way, its own kind of healthy skepticism?
The way I think about it is, if your kid's learning to drive a car, you take them through the steps, right?
Yeah.
Until observing their behavior online can be a really helpful hint, because you get a lot of clues about what they're actually doing. That then can be a good conversation starter to say, hey, I noticed that you seem very interested in this. Be sure that you're looking out for these kinds of things online.
Yeah. I think about the parental controls that do exist today. Why are these controls not really that effective? Why are they still so difficult to implement?
I think the notion of parental controls is just a bit antiquated, to be honest. Like, your kids don't want to be controlled. They want to basically make decisions on their own. Yeah. And so this notion of being able to control a kid is not actually a real thing. Because really, at the end of the day, what are you trying to do? You're trying to make sure that these kids have a healthy relationship with technology. Yeah. When they're out in the free world, they know how to dissect good and bad information, how much time is good online.
Well, and absolutely too, because I don't want to hover, but it is the Wild West, it feels, out there, and I'm trying to help him, understand his own privacy, and I want to give it to him, but also guide him, because as you said, it's just, there's so much happening there. What was the impetus for you to be like, we need to create an app that helps parents understand these issues?
I didn't quite understand this until we went through a personal event in our family. One of my kids was struggling a lot with mental health issues. We spent a lot of time understanding, how she's spending time online. It became very clear that she was actually struggling through a lot of things that she was having a hard time verbalizing. Like, she didn't want to talk about it, because most kids, they don't want to burden their parents. They don't want to say things that they think could be difficult for them to process. So once we got a glimpse into that, we said, okay, we understand what's going on with this kid. So it's taken us some time, but she's doing really well now. It's taken a few years.
That's really great.
During that journey, lack of information was my biggest enemy at that point, because really, how do you get this information? These kids are on the phones for 8 hours. They have many apps they're using, and I hear lots of parents that I speak with saying, when my kid goes to bed, I go through their phone, for 45 minutes to an hour, and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I want to make sure they're safe. So that was a big impetus for us to say, look, can we actually help these parents by giving them the tools so they can identify both whether the kid is safe, what are they doing online all day long, are there behavioral patterns that are changing?
Well, I'm really glad the situation really improves with the family. That's really great.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hari's insights eased my guilt about monitoring my son's online activities, helping me balance safety with privacy. I headed next to New York City because I needed to take this new advice and understand how families can practically use this at home. Seeking perspective, I turned to Merve at Common Sense Media, who reminded me there's hope because of what we parents can accomplish. How would you define media literacy?
It's both the traditional sense of understanding how media works, how to really break down the different components of it, recognizing that there are some imbalances potentially in how media can present itself now.
With these imbalances, with misinformation, with manipulation, what does Common Sense recommend to understand what we're seeing and how to evaluate it?
I think what we try to encourage kids and educators to do is try to dive deeper into trying to understand why a piece of content was created. And understanding where that intention comes from is going to be incredibly important for us, especially for our young kids, to empower their own agency as they grow up. And that's probably the heart of the work. How do we develop strong agency so that they can feel more thoughtful in the way that they're making decisions moving forward?
What is the information that is being delivered to our kids that they're being bombarded with constantly?
Yeah. So I think the reality is our kids are being bombarded with messages that take their attention the most. And sometimes these messages are actually messages that are uncomfortable, but because it makes them like, what is this? That attention says, feed me more of this.
What's the one thing you wish every parent knew about media literacy and what they should be looking for in their kids and their families?
So I think what I hope every parent considers is making this a part of day-to-day conversation. Not just bringing it up when they've got a problem, not just bringing it up when they heard something, not just bringing it up when they feel like they're afraid their kid might have gotten into something, but making it a consistent conversation. That way, when something does hit the fan and you do need to kind of get into a mode of like, let's talk, they come to them first. And that's going to be a huge unlock.
I found his dad insights helpful, and I asked him to continue with me on the streets of New York City.
So, what do you think fact and truth mean for our kids today compared to what we had growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it's much harder now than it was for us.
Yeah.
The reality is they've identified that their news, their information comes from the spaces they spend their time in. In the social media space, it doesn't really matter. Everything is framed as true to them now.
Yeah, right.
And how do we empower them to ask questions as they move forward versus just accepting it?
I just kind of giving a critical thought, trying to give a little bit of healthy skepticism too.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm a trusting guy. I'm a good guy. I try to be nice to people.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I give him some of that street smarts about even this content, right?
It's incredibly important because I think the biggest fear that I have is they become overly critical versus,
Really?
I want them to really look at that balance between critical and cynical, right? There's a point where we want them to really think thoughtfully, but then there's also that point is if they believe everything is fake, then just nothing is true.
Yeah, right.
Right, so there's the extreme.
So the pendulum goes the other direction
100%.
too far, right? Want a hot dog?
Sure.
Yeah, in New York, right? You got to.
I mean, why not?
Can we just get 2 hot dogs? I think about now what I'm trying to do with Gabe. Like, how do I help him understand, taking that pause? How do I understand just everything when I'm not around? I think that's mostly what I'm concerned about because, when we definitely let him watch YouTube, but it's on the big, family TV. There are definitely moments where we hear something, we're like, hey, well, not that channel, not that video anymore. He knows now. He's like, all right, I heard it too. Like, we're gonna switch it to something else. But it's really important to try to get through to him some of these, I think that skepticism, like finding that balance, because I know that he has a ton of this time to watch things when I'm not around.
Sure.
And that's what I am really most worried about.
I mean, I think that's the thing that we want to try and do is how do we instill some of our own kind of values into the conversation and not just make it about the tech itself or the platform itself, but really what are the values that we have in regards to trust, safety, family, and how does that represent in the way that we then use technology? I think this is the important part for families to recognize because some of the overwhelm for families is that I don't know enough about this, so I don't talk enough about it.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is we are rooted in our value systems and the way that we connect with people, the way that we make family a priority, the way that we make happiness or trust a priority. And so to bring that value system into the way that the tool or the tech might be presented in your life, really applying that is important because if you feel that something feels off and I don't know if I can trust this, trust your value sort, right? Same thing with the way that they're interacting doesn't make me feel good, trust in that. And so there is an opportunity that we can all, talk about without knowing all the tech, but we can be there when kids start to feel uncomfortable.
I really like that. But what I want to also learn is how do I help him understand where the line is? Because I feel like the internet's just completely different than it was for us growing up.
Sure.
Growing up with AOL. Man, I had a CompuServe account because my mom had a CompuServe. I'm like, I'm gonna really date myself there. But like, what you can do now, I think, is just so much exponentially different from our generation, and things have really changed. And we're supposed to be the ones who've had this technology growing up, and yet I'm feeling out of control sometimes with it, and trying to find a good way to tell him, how do we that's too far, but why is this too far? Why is that not too far?
Sure. I mean, it is important to know the age and stage of our kids, just kind of what is appropriate for them to talk about at this point.
Right.
But you can talk about niceness without having to go deep into bullying, right? It's an opportunity to be able to root back again to fundamentals for how we expect each other to be treated, how you want to be treated.
All right, what specifically are you saying to help do that? Are you creating that environment you think beforehand, or are you asking them to think of certain questions? I guess it just depends on the age.
I mean, there's obviously situations where something's happened and you want to be able to kind of talk through, I heard that this happened in school, how did you feel about it?
Yeah.
It wasn't about you, but what if it was? What do you think you would need to do? I think part of it is also how do we prepare them for the reality that it might happen. And I think there is this fear that we do
might
here.
happen, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, if we talk about it too much, are we positioning them to get involved in something like this, right? I think the more we can just have the conversation, and again, not root it in something that actually happened, it's an opportunity for them to recognize, oh, we can talk about these things, and I'm not going to get in trouble for them.
Merve showed me there's a way to navigate this, but it became clear I needed to hear real stories directly from teens. I met Paula, Maya, and their mom, Stephanie, at their home in the Philadelphia suburbs. What social media do you both use the most right now?
I would say Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat.
Okay, in that order for you? Okay, and what do you use?
My order would probably be, it's the same thing, but my order would probably be Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok.
Okay. Well, so with everything on social media that you are seeing, that you are scrolling through, you're being bombarded with, how are you mostly engaging and telling if that is, useful information for you?
I feel like it really comes down to like if the source is reliable or not, which can be hard to tell sometimes.
What do you go by now? Or what is suspicious even to you now?
Really everything's like suspicious at this point. I trust like news sites.
News sites, but you have to be careful with bias, but
True.
News sites, yeah.
And then Google's always a trusty friend if I don't know something's true.
Okay, why is Google trusted in your mind?
Because, wait, that's a great question, actually. I feel like I was just always like,
Yeah.
that's a really great question. I feel like I was always just like brought up to think that like, if you look it up on Google, like that's like true.
Okay, yeah, we got to challenge that even more today too, because we don't know where Google's pulling that from, right?
Especially the AI stuff.
That's the AI stuff, right? That's what it gives you first now. What are you most concerned about as a mom in terms of the internet and what they're using?
How they portray themselves to the world. That's one of my biggest concerns. I think, so we do talk about it. It's like, okay, well, what does this particular scene say about you? Whether or not it's something you're doing or your friend is doing behind you.
Do you think that truth and facts have a different meaning for us than for you guys in your generation? You think truth has changed?
I think we have to be more critical of what we deem the truth. Like what we find out, especially online, of like, if you just see this article or like you see this post, do you really believe it?
How do you decide what's truth and how do you decide how to be a good person online?
I think keeping yourself educated on how to like tell when it's a fake account or when it's a real account and how to seek out truthful news. I think that's very important. And then in terms of how to be a good digital citizen is like how you're presenting yourself out online, what information are you putting out? Are you okay with other people seeing that, even if it's a stranger, even if it's your boss, your teacher? Like, how are you presenting yourself to the world?
I'm most worried about when I can't be there as a parent, and not just what he's seeing, what he's consuming, and the messaging he's going to get when I'm not there.
And that's a completely valid concern to have. Like, I'm concerned, like, for when and if I become a parent, like, for the same exact thing.
I feel like teach your child, like, the principles of, like, what you're consuming is not everything's going to be truthful, and then you have to, like, trust that they'll remember that.
That's a great first lesson. That's a great first lesson.
We live in a moment flooded by dangerous messaging, targeted content, and digital manipulation. Despite this, Paula and Maya gave me hope. These two have lived through the worst of the internet, yet they're thoughtful, have a healthy skepticism, and want to make the world better. It's easy to feel overwhelmed as parents, but within this complexity lies an opportunity to build skepticism and critical thinking in ourselves and our kids. Visiting a school teaching media literacy reinforced my optimism. At Tanner Duckery, a Philadelphia K-8 public school, third graders were learning to recognize manipulated images as part of the curriculum provided by Common Sense Media. You were bringing up a great lesson today on photo manipulation.
Yes.
And why was that an important lesson for the kids to learn?
Last week, we did a lesson on the reasons why people manipulate photos.
Yeah.
A lot of students now are on social media all the time. So what we're trying to teach them is how to recognize things that are manipulated that may not be real, which then ties into anything that they're doing with research, right? We have to make sure that we're teaching our students how to find sources. In third grade today, we did a lesson on how easy it is to manipulate a photo, where they put a plane in the foreground and
it's really easy.
It was super easy. Now, a lot of them were remarking, too, how easy it was, but they had a lot of fun with it.
You were telling me earlier, too, that a lot of the issues that you're dealing with are actually coming from, they're initiating online.
Yes, actually, the majority of the stuff that goes on here is things that take place online. Films that are put up, posts that are made of kids that may or may not be real. But 90% of our fights are dealing with things happening offline.
Wow.
And the films that are being sent. And again, it's really sad for the kids because it follows you. It keeps on going. So if you get into a fight once, people see it over and over and over again. They have to relive that fight. And certain times it's not real, it's fake.
Right.
So we're trying to show our students, don't see everything that you see online is not real.
Seeing this gave me joy. The internet is instant knowledge and communication, yet we've lost the simplicity of knowing what to trust. Our kids need guidance, not through constant suspicion, by showing them how to apply the smell test. Is this true? Like Merv said, parents must regularly dialogue with our kids so they feel safe and ready to open up. Media literacy is a consistent conversation rooted in family values of trust, safety, and respect. I'm also taking Hari's advice, reminding me to evaluate online needs with my son so we can build his independence and remain his greatest supporter. And I'm thankful for Patrick, who demands critical thinking from various viewpoints. Let's ensure our kids grow up equipped not just to survive in the digital age, but to thrive as thoughtful, responsible citizens. Let's embrace skepticism, but balance it with hope. This is Grown Up Dad.
I feel like you see other people doing it, and it's like, you trust that person because you watch them online.
I appreciate you making me now have to talk about the Tide Pod challenge.
It's not big anymore. It's not big anymore.
In Philly Stadium, thank you very much. It's a huge thing because they have buy one, get one now. It used to be dollar dog. Yeah, they used to have dollar dog nights.
Yeah.
They got rid of that, sadly.
Got you. One more time.
There we go. No hot dog.